It was March 12th, 2017. I had big plans of cycling across Canada through the summer. At that point, it was winter, and a bike tour seemed unthinkable. However, if this tour was to happen, I needed to prepare. This is what I wrote on that day on my Facebook page, Destination Canada 150. Just over 2 months to go, and it'll be the end of May, my starting date for the big ride. It still seems far off at the moment, as we've just had a week of real winter here in Edmonton. The touring bike has been in the shed for a few months. I'm also still shopping for the right gear at reasonable prices. Need a tent, sleeping bag, mattress. Any recommendations are welcome. I am George Schlacek,
the one and only.
And I ended up getting all this gear on Amazon shortly after I wrote this. Everything was brand new and never even tried out before my flight to Vancouver on May 18th. Besides regular camping gear, I had also ordered a portable water filtration device. It hadn't arrived till that day. What probably happened was that it was delivered when no one was at our house and the package just grew legs and walked away. You know what I'm talking about. May 18th was the fateful day. I had a deal on my flight to Vancouver as my daughter Jennifer worked for Air Canada at the time. Thank you, Jennifer. My ticket was on standby, so after arriving at the airport, I couldn't be sure how soon I'd get to board a plane. Luckily, it was on the first try. By lunchtime that day, I was at Vancouver International Airport with my panniers and a big bundle and a huge box containing my dismantled bicycle. This was, by the way, the last flight so far that I ever did with my bike in a box like that. I had pictures of the journey from my house all the way to the starting point in Tofino, BC. But after searching all my digital records, it turns out that I can no longer find them. This may be in part because, in my mind, the tour started 2 days later when I left Tofino riding my bike. In hindsight, the days leading up to this were equally important, as I was on an emotional roller coaster. On the one hand, it was super exciting to start this adventure, but knowing that I wasn't going to live at home with Barbara for 3 months was stressful too. We'd be in touch daily, but missing each other. The one thing that made it easier was knowing that Barbara was making her own travel plans for that summer, which included a week-long journey joining me on my way along the Kettle Valley Rail Trail, which was part of the Trans-Canada Trail, and that we had researched together. However, those were just plans when I left home that day. It seemed like from the moment I left my doorstep to my arrival in Vancouver, almost no time passed. Vancouver is in the Pacific time zone, so 1 hour behind Edmonton time. The journey only got long when there was an hour or so wait to catch a bus to the Tsawwassen ferry that would take me to Nanaimo and Vancouver Island. The bus ride was comfortable and relatively quick. I remember getting off the bus and then having to drag my box all the way onto the ferry. The weather was perfect and the passage was very enjoyable. Of course, I was mostly stuck in the seat because I had to babysit my big box that wasn't easy to drag around. Same problem getting off the boat in Nanaimo. The box was too awkward and heavy to carry, but dragging it was starting to wear off the bottom. If I could only make it last another day. A taxi took me right to the Departure Bay Motel, where I had pre-booked a room for the night. Once checked in, I had to take care of my immediate needs. I was hungry, so I walked around town for some quick meal. It was a Burger King that popped up first and got my business. I was reminded of my first bicycle tour ever when I had discovered a 2-for-1 hamburger special in Mississippi and Louisiana at that chain. It's funny how the mind works in those moments. All of a sudden, years-old memories pop up as if no time had passed. Next thing on my agenda was to find out where to catch the bus to Tofino, the town I had selected as my starting point for the journey, simply because it was at the Pacific Ocean and just about as far west as you could go. There was another ferry terminal relatively close to the motel, but not close enough for dragging my bike box there. And that's where the bus terminal was located. By the time I reached the place, no one was at the ticket counter, but I was able to find out the rough departure time for the bus. This was pretty much it for the day. Back at the motel, I secured a taxi for the following morning and then relaxed in my room watching irrelevant stuff on TV. The next morning went smoothly. There was a wait spent chatting with other bus passengers and then a 4-hour bus ride that almost made me seasick. The trip included a break in Port Alberni. Especially memorable is the second part of this bus trip. To be honest, it freaked me out. The road was very curvy and narrow. There was barely enough room for the bus. Was I making a big mistake by coming here? I was supposed to cycle back on this road and it was crazy, but I had come out here to do just that. To be honest, I was glad to get off that bus. To stand on firm ground after this roller coaster ride felt good. So I'm in Tofino, British Columbia. Just got off that bus over there. But I was tired from wandering around Nanaimo the previous afternoon and from sitting on a bus for over 3 hours. I still had the whining of the old motor ringing in my ears from when the bus had fought its way up the steep hills, barely fitting the narrow lane. There were immediate challenges to deal with. One was the luggage I could only drag around until I found a spot to assemble the bicycle. I had not booked a room in Tofino. It was going to be May long weekend and this meant high season, especially since the weather was picture perfect and unusually warm for the end of May. Where was I going to go and how was I going to get there? I ended up dragging the bike box to the back wall of the Royal Canadian Legion building, which was across from the bus depot. This had to be done in 2 stages as I also had the bundle of panniers. I could not go anywhere until the bike was ready to ride, so that was priority number 1. Besides that, I was hungry and really needed to go pee. An hour and a half later, the bike was ready to ride. Being mobile made all the difference. Well, an hour and a half has passed and my bike is just about ready to go. The only thing that is still missing, but I'm going to install it later because I really got to get to eat something and I got to go pee. It's a brand new kilometer thing. I had room in my pannier, so I decided to go to a grocery store first and get what I needed for supper. There was a little co-op store in town and it had a bathroom too, so my most urgent needs were finally met. The place was crowded. Teenagers were hanging out in front of the door sucking on pops and freezies waiting for their moms to finish shopping. I still had to get rid of the bike box I was dragging around. At the back door, a clerk took it off my hands and chopped it up for recycling. I bought plenty of bottled water, some fruits, trail mix, bread, salami, cheese, and coleslaw for sandwiches, and some ranch dressing to make those less dry. It was hardly gourmet food, but set me back close to $30. What had I signed up for? The outlook for my diet seemed pretty grim unless I splurged on restaurant meals often, which I probably couldn't afford. I had supper at a community park with picnic tables. It was bustling with youngsters. The sandwiches weren't so bad after all, and I had enough left to last me into the next day, perhaps even beyond. To ensure my goodies wouldn't go bad right away, I had brought my lunch cooler that I normally use for work. It fit nicely into what I called my kitchen, the left side rear pannier, which also had my cooking gear. Packing panniers is an ongoing battle, as stuff always gets shifted around to where it fits best, but by assigning fixed locations to key elements of my load, there was at least some consistency and stuff would be easier to find. For the moment, all my needs were met. It was a beautiful day and there was plenty of time to worry about where to spend the night. Still, I was stressing over it. I had never even pitched my new tent yet, and here I was thinking about stealth camping once it got dark, which is pretty late in May on Vancouver Island's west coast. I spent the next hour figuring out and installing the odometer, a brand new VDO wired unit. The instructions were in many languages, but not the greatest. Once it was set up, I recorded the moment, thereby making a picnic table in Tofino the official starting point for my destination Canada 150 tour. The first few kilometers were through the small town of Tofino, hoping to find a place where I could later set up my tent and sleep until the early morning hours. What I found out was that there was a bylaw prohibiting stealth camping and that the fine was $200. Talk about discouragement on day one. Still quite determined, I asked around and checked out various places. A trip to one of the beaches had me abandon my bike for about 20 minutes because the trail leading down was too rough. I'm at Tonkin Beach in Tofino. Beautiful here. The excursion was not useful for finding a campsite, but gave me a glimpse at a fantastic sunset on the Pacific coast. The evening was very mild for this early in the season, and the view was stunning. It made me want to stay here for a while. But it was the beginning of May long weekend. Tofino was bustling with tourists. I briefly considered spending the night in a hostel, but they were full and cost over $100 anyways, which was not in my budget. It was almost dark as I was riding toward the Bella Pacifica campground, where I got a campsite for $58. A 4-minute shower could be had for a toonie. Nestled between families with pickup trucks, camping trailers and large tents, it was hardly the kind of camping I had envisioned for my summer adventure, but the location at the ocean, with the sound of the incoming waves, more than made up for it. The tent was surprisingly fast and easy to set up. As soon as I was done with it, it was pitch dark. I was surrounded by people with campfires that were enjoying their conversations and considerable quantities of beer. It didn't bother me. After my toonie shower, I crawled into the tent and messaged Barbara for a few minutes and then fell asleep to the sound of the ocean. Here I was, completely on my own, not knowing how I would adapt to life on the road in Canada. The alarm was set for 6 a.m. the next morning. Getting up early was the best solution I had for conquering the dangerous part of Highway 4 along Kennedy Lake and beyond. So this is the morning of day one of my tour. So yeah, it's 6:30 in the morning or something, and I'm getting ready to get out of here. There surely wouldn't be any traffic early in the morning. What I kind of forgot was that I wasn't really that close to that part of the highway and how much time it would take to get there. On the bus, it had seemed like a 5-minute stint because the road into Tofino was relatively flat. The following day would be Saturday, the first long weekend of the summer season. The forecast was calling for unusually hot weather. In the next episode, I'll tell you about that day and the rest of my journey across Vancouver Island. The first days of long-distance cycling I had done in quite some time. As usual, I sincerely hope you can join me for that. And yeah, I'd definitely appreciate if you could subscribe right there. Thank you, and I see you soon. And I got more stuff to watch.